Hi.
Hi,
Let's try to
welcome.
figure it out. Very lovely to meet you in person. We've been
Yeah,
talking on the phone and so lovely to see your face.
yes, thank you so much for coming on our live and allowing us to interview you. So, for everybody who's just joining us, my name is Yasmin Al Shawa. I am the communications manager here at Women's Voices Now. And with us today, we have Ava Homa, and she is the incredible Kurdish author that we are interviewing today for her brand new book, Daughters of Smoke and Fire. And she'll be telling us a little bit more about that. And today is actually also International Human Rights Day, which is very fitting for this interview. Um, so, for those who have never heard of this beautiful new book, Daughters of Smoke and Fire, this is Ava's debut novel that she just released this year. But just like everything else, the tour has been canceled, and so she's doing a lot more online campaigning and interviews. And so, for everybody joining us, thank you for supporting women's voices, really. And so this book has actually already been reviewed by The Independent. The Independent has said that this book is a blistering, powerful tale of standing up to oppression. It's also been reviewed by the Los Angeles Review of Books, which says that it's a fiery, soul-nourishing novel. And so you've already received all these incredible reviews from this book, but I really want to start with you telling us a little bit about you, where you come from, and where you are today.
Sure, I would like to start by thanking you, Yasmin, for making this time and speaking to me. I would like to thank Heidi, the executive director of the Women's Voices Now, and tell you how much I love and respect everything you're doing at Women's Voices Now, how important and unique it is. I mean, really appreciate you.
Thank you.
Um, when it comes to talking about, my journey, it's a little bit, it's going to take a little bit of time. So, but I'll try to be as brief as possible. Hello to everyone who is joining us. I see familiar faces here. Yishan, everyone, welcome. So, um, so my book, Daughters of Smoke and Fire, as you mentioned, came out in May 2020. And I've been ever since known as one of the first Kurdish women who published a novel in English. But what does that mean? Kurdish people are 40 million population. So what are their women doing if they're not, creating literary work? And the answer to that question is somewhat shocking, really sad, and that's the fact that Kurdish women have been on the media only as fighters, because I belong to a group of people for whom the right to live, the right to exist is not a given right, it's something we have to fight for. And this has been going on for decades, but recently when Kurdish women started fighting ISIS, one of the most brutal um, groups of our world, that's when the international media started paying attention to Kurdish women as these really strong, independent, powerful women who are fearless, and they are fighting two battles at the same time, fighting external occupiers on one hand, but also their own community, and the male chauvinism in their own community on the other hand. So what that means was when I was born, one of the first thing I learned about myself is that I belong to people who have been subject to genocide. But what does that mean? On one hand, that means the fact that we're alive, the fact that we're even breathing is a victory in itself, right? Here are all these forces that try to wipe you off the earth, and yet here you are, you exist, you resist. And then there have been different ways of fighting this non-existence, and for me it has been my pen. But where did it all start? Why should in the 21st century there must be a group of people who have to put aside all their talents and interests and instead fight for the right to live? And the answer to that, unfortunately, goes about 100 years of age. Do you have time for that? I'll be very quick, but
I think it's important for people to understand if people don't understand the background of the Kurds and the history. So just maybe a brief history for people to get the context of your story and the book.
Absolutely. So, up until the First World War, Kurdistan existed on the Atlas, in the World Atlas. And then after the First World War, the Allies decided to distribute what they considered spoils of war. So, not humans, but spoils of war. And that was us and our destiny, among many other people. So, when they redraw the map of what's currently known as Southeast Asia or the Middle East, they first, in a treaty, promised Kurds their own land. And then they decided, especially the Brits, decided that, it's not really in our interest if Kurds have their own country because they're not specifically docile. So let's do what's interest us. And that means Kurdistan became part of four different countries of Iran, Iraq, Turkey, and Syria. And even though that created interest, it was in the interest of the allies, the colonizers, that created 100 years of suffering for us. So in all these four countries, we haven't been considered or perceived as human. We have been perceived as threat. Therefore, we have been subject to things like genocide. We have been subject to cultural genocide. We have been subject to chemical gas attack. We have been subject to imprisonment, torture, and all of that. And so when I realized that I have the gift of writing and storytelling, I could either reproduce already familiar stories and sell and gain all those things, or write a story that's authentic and original or only I can write. And this one I decided that I want to do Daughters of Smoke and Fire. But in order for me to get out of Iran, I had to get admission and scholarship and student visa to go to Canada, University of Windsor, get my master's degree in English and creative writing. And then I published my first book, which was a collection of short stories called Echoes from the Other Land, which was nominated for Frank O'Connor and several other awards and received some acclaim. And then recently, my novel, Daughters of Smoke and Fire, here it is, was published. Daughter was published by HarperCollins in Canada, Abrams in the United States, and luckily has received a lot of acclaim so far. But what it does in terms of what the book is presenting and offering is telling you an untold story, is telling you a story that has never been told before.
Beautiful. Thank you. So you already touched upon this. My next question for you was, what really inspired you to create this book? And what I'm hearing is you didn't want to recreate what was already out there, the narrative that we see always on the news, or the one that people usually just know about. So you decided to create this story. So tell us a little bit more about your inspiration for this kind of storytelling.
Okay, so Yasmin, what oppressors do to you is they destroy you physically. When they can't do that, they deny you, they deny your existence. When they can't do that either in the 21st century, what they do is they try to define you, to name you, to present a one-dimensional, really wrong image of you. And what storytellers and literature does is combating that. On one hand, I'm combating voicelessness. I'm writing Kurdish women into literature because no one has been writing Kurdish women into literature. We have to do it ourselves. On one hand, I'm being a voice for the voiceless. On the other hand, I'm joining force with people like you, like other nonprofit organizations who are working toward eradicating voicelessness. So instead of just being one voice or two voices, we are moving toward a world where no story is left untold, where we can hear each other's stories. And why is it important? I don't want you to read Daughters of Smoke and Fire to feel bad for Kurds and everything that we've been through. I want you to read about us and understand how we became masters of rising from our ashes. One of the most common mottos in Kurdistan is that resistance is life. Ber khodan jiyan, resistance is life. So we know how to resist. We know how to overcome all these obstacles. And that's a very valuable lesson that we gain through generations of paying for it with our lives. And that's a lesson we can share with the rest of the world. And God knows that our world nowadays really needs to remember that we can tap into our strengths despite all the ugliness that goes around us and move on. So Daughters of Smoke and Fire is writing Kurdish women into literature, is being a voice for the minority, is an attempt in removing voicelessness, and it's giving the world a story that's really important and has to be told, an authentic story that only I can write, because the fact is no Western author can take a trip to Kurdistan, stay there for a week, and tell our story with the nuance and depths that we're capable of telling.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And so it's basically activism through literature
Absolutely.
that this is. So I really want to ask you about the protagonist, the main character,
Hmm.
Leila. Do you pronounce it Leila
Yeah,
or Leila?
Layla.
And she is she's actually it's perfect. She's the reason this kind of character is the reason that women's voices now exist. She is an aspiring filmmaker, but a filmmaker that wants to bring to light the struggles of her people to really get people to understand, you know, their fight, their what's happening. And so my question to you is you're an author, you're a writer, you're a speaker. Why would you choose for the main character to be a filmmaker rather than any other kind of activist or
I think we all agree that that film has the widest reach of all forms of art. It can cross a lot of barriers that, say, for example, literature wouldn't be able to, like such as language barriers or location barriers, right? So if you really want to reach the largest group of number of people, largest group of people, film is an excellent means of doing that. And my protagonist, Leila, has been through a lot more than I have personally been through. And so I wanted her to have that sense of redemption and that power at the end, because she's a visual person. She loves drawing. She has a visual memory. She loves movies. She finds meaning in the world through movies. The movies are her refuge. Movies are her way of, connecting, navigating life. And so when she decides to become a filmmaker, all these obstacles pile up. At one point, her brother disappears. So she now has to find out whether or not he's alive. If he's alive, where is he? What's up with him? And so after everything that I made my poor protagonist go through, because I wanted her to represent the story of a group of women who are fighting ethnic oppression on one hand and gender oppression on the other hand. And that's a really tricky battle, Yasmin, because on one hand, you're fighting shoulder to shoulder with your man. On the other hand, they come back and they want to turn around or oppress you. And now you have to fight them and say no. So you're my battle mate, but you can't become my oppressor. So women who manage to continue this fight and make their heads out of all these problems, and they are exceptionally strong. And Layla is one of those characters, and I wanted her to have the reward of being a filmmaker.
because you felt it has a bigger impact.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, film could be very powerful. And I know that there could be people watching this that may not be from the same background or culture or political or geological oppressed as the Kurdish people. But there are a lot of other women around the world that could be watching this, inspired by your willingness to storytell, to be a whistleblower, to use art in your creativity to bring to light these issues. Um, is there anything that you could say to the women, the general women who feel oppressed by, and it's actually incredibly true. Like we could fight alongside men against a particular issue and then simultaneously be oppressed by them. So what do you have to say to that, to people on the broader spectrum, women around the world who are watching that?
Right. I think two things. First of all, it's very important for us to see and notice all forms of oppression, from outright misogyny to really subtle, benevolent sexism. It's important that we see that, we notice it, and not turn a deaf ear or blind eye, and acknowledge that it is here, it exists, and I see it, but at the same time not to allow that to overwhelm you, because as Toni Morrison said, we really don't have time for self-pity and for despair, and all we need to do is we fight, we create language. That's how civilizations heal. So on one hand, I have seen that there is a tendency to turn away from injustice just because it's so painful and frustrating, I don't think that's the right thing to do. It's important to say, I see you, injustice. You're there and I see you. And at the same time, not let it take over you. In fact, you are the one who slowly, little by little, and one step at a time, and in unity with other people who fight your fight, to eradicate that. The other thing is, nowadays there's a lot of talk about diversity, right? Joe Biden wants to have the most diverse cabinet. A lot of groups around the world, they want to have a diverse group. I just want to emphasize it's very important for us to not think that everyone who looks like us is going to fight for us. We have to pick people who fight for us even though they do not sound like us or they do not look like us, right? So that's something that we have to bring into our consciousness. We need a lot of allies. We need allies who may not necessarily be from the same gender or background, but people who have, because they have been part of dominant group, they have a much wider reach. So if we get them on board, get them on our side, and not exclude them because of differences, then we are getting ahead in our fight against injustice.
Beautiful. Actually, great segue. My next question to you is, in the book, I know we do see some oppression from the male characters, but we also see some good male allies. And so talk to us a little bit about male allyship when it comes to activism, and how important that is, both you've seen in your personal life, in the book, and in general.
Right. So as a novelist, it's my job to create nuanced, complex characters. My villains have to be really interesting and complicated, the same way that my protagonist is supposed to be, right? So I can't afford to have a one-dimensional male character. I can't even afford to have a one-dimensional, a racist out there. There has to be like all these aspects to all the people that appear in the novel. On the other hand, I have seen a lot of time that men do have some feminist sensibility because they have seen their loved one, like their mothers or their friends, have been oppressed. So they do want to be your ally, but they feel awkward. They know there's a lot that they don't know. They're afraid of saying the wrong thing, doing the wrong thing. And so it's important for us in creating a network of allies to show that patience, in educating them, that if someone's heart is with us, we need to be patient and kind in educating them how they can then become better allies with us, and not frighten them because of their mistakes. So I've had male characters who did not want to help any woman at all, and I have male characters like Chia, who really loves his sister, but at one point he's incapable of seeing her. He's incapable of understanding her problems. He's so involved in in his own world of becoming a human rights lawyer, taking the perpetrators against humanity to the International Criminal Court, that he forgets his sister, who lives in the same house, is really suffering, and there is much that he can do for her, but he can't see it. So we all have this blind spot, right? So then Leila educates him and gets him on board, and that's how they can both really progress. So.
Beautiful. Yeah, it's extremely important to put that, for it to be realistic. Like you said, they're complex. We're complex humans, and we need those in storytelling. And so although this is your debut novel, you're not a new storyteller. You've been storytelling for a while, and you've been speaking in different languages around the world for a while as well. Tell me a little bit about your experience as a storyteller, as a woman or femme-identifying human, around the world, as a whistleblower, as an activist. Tell me a little bit about your experience and what challenges you faced and how you've overcome them.
I think I went through stages of feeling really disappointed and angry at everything that I saw around me, to the point when I realized, okay, if I want to push ahead, I can't go on with all these negative feelings. It's good to use anger as a fuel, because it's a very good fuel for an activist, but I strongly believe that activists need to be kind. So how do you do that transformation? How do you turn anger and dissatisfaction with the world, and have the metabolism to now turn it into action and into patience and education and all of that. And that has been one of the hardest lessons for me to learn. And I feel like every single day I have to remind myself that this is my job, that if I want to help create a better world, then I have to make sure within myself I have this factory of getting the negative input and having a positive output. And I think one of the most important lessons that I learned in life is, as I have been, traveling, writing, speaking, and all of that, is that there is a lot that happens to us and we have no control over them, right? But between what happens and how we respond, there is a pause. And I think that's where our power lies. My heroes, the people that I look up to, are the ones who don't react to event, they respond. And I think that's because they take a pause and they consider things and then try to have the best response they can possibly. And even Viktor Frankl, in his book Man in Search of Meaning, which has a very sexist title, but I think it still has like life lessons to teach you, he says that between the stimulus and the response, that's where your freedom lies. And I think for us as women, as activists, as filmmakers, as people who really have to fight for the most simple thing, like I said, for us, even for the right to live, the right to exist, the right to breathe is something we have to fight for. For me to get a book published, to get across all these gatekeepers, was a really uphill battle, right? But then at the end of the day, what matters is that I see all that ugliness, but I'm not giving up. I see all the ugliness, but I don't let them overcome me. And that's how we can become masters of rising from our ashes. And yeah, it does hurt. It's very unfortunate. Like, you wish you could live in a world where you didn't have to tackle with this thing. So it's gonna hurt, and you have to be patient and allow the hurt to process and take its face. But it doesn't mean you carry that hurt with you, right? You carry a mountain of pain with you as you go around. You allow it, you process it, you put it aside, and then you're ready for your next battle.
And has that been a process for you to learn? Is this something, was there a moment that it just hit you that this is what needs to happen? Has it been like, how it's very wise how you speak about it, and it sounds like you've received a good amount of backlash to have to come into this understanding. How was it something that someone told you? Did you have a mentor along the way?
Mm-hmm. Honestly, Yasmin, it's all about reading. I think my best teacher, my best supports have been books, because I feel like when we are writing, humanity can put our best insights into a book and sell it for so cheap. It's less than $20, $10. You can buy one of the best books in the world. And it's through reading and rereading and also bringing awareness, because you can't just read like a parrot and not think about it. But reading and seeing what other people have been through and bringing that awareness inside your own life. And you know that you're constantly making mistakes. Like, I know that so many times I have to redefine how I perceive life. And, I have to take breaks. I have to pick my battles. There are things that I'm learning every single day. Like, so many nights I wake up at night and I think about, okay, what's next? How am I going to come across this? Because Yasmin, I come from a culture background where no one said, Ava, how about you become a novelist? There has never been anything like that. I've had backlash and obstacle after obstacle after obstacle after obstacle, not only until the time of publishing this book, but even after this has come out. So as a woman who has all these frameworks of migrant, stateless, women, Kurdish, Middle Eastern, all of those things that none of them encourages a woman to go become a novelist. I feel like, in a sense, having the perspective of the minority allows you to see the world from a certain way and understand things that if you are constantly in a place of privilege, maybe you won't be pushed to have to think about these things. So I owe everything I am and everything I know to the greatest minds of humanity, and to books, really, to other authors.
Beautiful. And now you have a book of your own that hopefully others can take and read and be inspired by. So before we get to that, what would you like, if you could just close your eyes and just make it happen, what would you like for people to get from reading this book?
I really want and hope that this book will hold a mirror before every reader, that every reader is able to see themselves part of their struggles as a human being on this planet in the book and then feel inspired by it. They have the joy of stories because, you know, storytelling, story reading has been part of human evolvement all throughout history. And so for people to see themselves, to feel like, okay, I read this book and now I understand myself and my world a little bit better because I'm not really here to be didactic, to teach people and say, hey, by the way, this is who the Kurds are and you should know. That's not really my goal. That's why I chose fiction as opposed to nonfiction, right? So if people read the book and say, I feel like this book enriched my life in one way or another. It brought me some joy, you know, helped me become stronger, helped me find the strength that is inside me. Then that's really a dream for me that has come true.
Amazing. And if people want to get the book, I have some looking at some comments and people wanting to read the book and they can't wait to read the book. So excited for you all to read this. Where can people go and buy the book? Where can they find it? And then we'll get into our giveaway.
Oh yeah, we're having a giveaway. So the book can be really found everywhere that books are found. I really encourage people to go through their local bookstores, or their through their local bookstore. There's Barnes and Nobles, there's online. My favorite bookstore is Book Passage in California, and this was their staff pick. So I would love it if you put a purchase through Book Passage. If you go to my website, avahoma.com, they have autographed copies that they will send to you. There's an audiobook if people are interested, especially new immigrants that may not still be used to reading a lot of English books and they would rather, you know, listen, or people who, you know, spend long hours in traffic for whatever reason, people who would like to listen to the book. The audiobook is available everywhere. There's also an ebook for those who like to, you know, read on their Kobo. So the book is available everywhere, and I really, really hope that you pick up a copy for yourself and a copy for your best friend, whoever you love, and you would like to give them the gift of reading.
Beautiful. And everybody who's watching, Ava is so kind to give us a book to give away. All you have to do to enter, and we'll post this after the live as well, but all you have to do to enter is post on your social media somewhere and tag us the reason for why you want to read this book. Like, why is it important for you to read this book? And we'll put your name into a drawing and we'll pick out a name and send you a free book.
Yeah, that's a courtesy of my publisher, Abrams Book. They have been very supportive. They're the people who are behind the book. They have done the beautiful design, the publicity, everything. They're the people who said, we believe in this book and we want to support them. And I'm so grateful to Abrams. And when they realize I'm talking to Women's Voices now, then they also decided to sponsor a giveaway, which is amazing.
Thank you. Thank you to your
So
publisher.
just post on Instagram, Facebook, anywhere that you are comfortable. Tell us why you would be interested in having a free copy of Daughters of Smoke and Fire, and tag me and tag Women's Voices Now, and you might be lucky enough to get a copy in the mail by next week.
So exciting. Yes. And if you've already gotten your copy, feel free to tag us as well. We look forward to this doing incredibly well, and for people to read more about these kinds of stories that really make a difference. So thank you so much for being on with us, Ava. Thank you so much for writing this book. Thank you so much for standing up and using your voice for gender equality, for justice, for social justice. So thank you very much. We really
Thank
appreciate
you. I feel the same way about you and Heidi and Women's Voices Now in general. I hope a lot of people will support places like Women's Voices Now and authors. And thank you to everyone who has joined us and commented and loved. It was amazing to see all this, you know, love, hearts bursting as I'm thinking. So yeah, it was a real pleasure. Appreciate your time.
Yes. Okay, and if anybody has any questions, we're going to sign off right now. But if you have any questions, feel free to direct message us or Ava. I'll also be posting this video in an IGTV, and putting all the information that we mentioned of where to get the book and how to join the giveaway that we are having.